No.
He's here. That's Katie. Will you mark her at present?
Got her.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 11th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Education. Here with us, we have Mr. Krasnoff, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, myself, Mr. Peterson, County Superintendent, Ms. Guernsey, Mr. Asa, and Mrs. Rinaldi. Coming right back in is Max and Kennelly. We also are joined by our student reps this evening. So if everyone can rise and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, before we get into our student reports, I do want to call everyone's attention to the fact that our esteemed Ludlow representatives, this will be their last meeting as they're seniors and looking for have a less complicated spring, and we everyone's going to live that with you and enjoy this time before we head off to college, and don't waste your nights here in meetings with us.
Oh, yeah.
And you do have some certificates of recognition for the both of you for your service. So if you'd like to receive these and maybe take a publicity-oriented photo. This is important work, and we're really lucky to have had you to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Great job.
Probably from the.
I think this photo here. Must be ready.
That's probably. Thank you.
And in case the board is worried that we're not going to be well represented by Ludlow, Dr. Hatzis has let me know that he has appointed two new representatives who are going to watch the meeting and contribute next time they're here.
Chair, I'd just like to, before we get started, say that March is Board of Education Member Appreciation Month. On behalf of all the students, staff, and families, we'd like to just give our special thanks to all of you for the time and the commitment that you give up every year to come to meetings, to fight the good fight on behalf of the students and the staff. So your commitment and passion does not go unnoticed. I know sometimes it seems like a thankless job for all of you, but from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of everyone, we'd just like to say thank you for everything you do. We have a little token of our appreciation, a little umbrella to keep you covered in the rain and in your travels. But so just really thank you for everything that you do for Fairfield.
Ludlow colors.
Board and Ludlow colors. So if you want to trade off, just in case, it's really up to you folks. Depending on feeder patterns and stuff, I don't.
I got you.
All right, well, thank you for that. Now, let's head into student reports, led off by Ludlow.
Long time no see. It's been a while. A little scruffy. I just got back from practice. Starting off, we just opened up with Big Fish on Friday. We had previews on Thursday for anyone in class. So this weekend we had this musical take place. A lot of work into the show. Been prepping for months. I heard about it in like November, and it's been like 5 months, and it was pretty good. I gotta say, I did watch it. I was very impressed by the performances. So it's about the story of a traveling salesman who lives life in the forest, and then, Edward's incredible larger-than-life stories throw everyone around him. Most of all, his devoted wife, son. But their son, Will, about to have a child of his own, is determined to find out the truth behind his father's epic tales. And if you want to find out the truth, buy tickets on our webpage for, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Okay. Congratulations to all the Fairfield Public School students who were recognized by the Connecticut Regional Scholastic Art Awards for their work in photography, painting, drawing, mixed media, and digital art. The pieces selected are considered the best in the state. Congratulations to Caitlin O'Connell, Aiden Goldberg, Wesley Bowen, Mio Nomoto, Dana Ponce, Isabella Vicente, and Julia Zoy. sold.
On March 5th and 6th, the College and Career Center, which is headed by Ms. Herman, had a resume building workshop. They worked to draft and plan resumes, so they have a nice template set out. I did go to that last year and it did help me quite a bit, because it's for jobs and, college applications. And I do believe that that workshop is what made me my job that I, like 3 months ago, so happy, I'm glad I went, basically.
So senior experiences, as the fourth quarter is nearing in, senior experiences starting here at Ludlow. So seniors have begun narrowing down their options. These options, you can do internships with teachers. I'm personally going to be working with a teacher. Your job, you can do a lot of different things. Beach cleanups, but it's 50 hours that you have to do and you have to have proof, obviously. Your plans for the senior experience are due on March 28th, and they must be approved by our one and only Dr. Hatsis. And senior experience will start on the 21st of May.
Going right in, we have spring sports starting up. Spring sports registration was due 2 weeks ago, and the 7th. So, oh wow, 3 days ago. And the sports will start soon. So preseason started for a lot of sports. I know lacrosse just started this week. And then track, and then also rugby, who had their first game on Sunday. We utter loss. It's half of our starting players. It's a Ludlow Ward combined team, so it's not all the fault on us. But yeah, we'll be back for the next one.
I just wanted to congratulate all the athletes who competed in their winter sports. We wanted to give a special shout out to the girls track and field team, the 1600 meter SMR team, 4 girls, Cyan Gatenby, Mia Gurovich, Maggie Zano, and Kaylee Pauline, who qualified for Nike Indoor Nationals and will be ending this week. Also, bowling won their league championship. 10 years. Wow. Boys foil squad are state champions in their event, and women's
Women's epee got
Thank
second.
you.
So the fencing team is a combined Ward and Ludlow team, and our men's foil team, which is 2 Ludlow players, me and James Geckler, and 2 Ward fencers, are Ron Chandramohan and Jaden Zong, won first place for men's foil, and then our women's epee team, who's headed by one of the captains, Emmy Morgan, got second place.
special shout out to Lexi Lockwood, who set a new school record, placed second at states, I believe, and Kate Simador, who got 1,000 career points. She's the first female basketball player at Ludlow to have accomplished this. So go Kate. And this Thursday there will be the townwide band festival. So Ludlow, we put aside our differences. We come together at Ward. We will the band team. Oh my God, the bands will be combining together. So by level, so concert and concert, jazz and jazz, whatever it is, come together and perform all new pieces. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade honors band will also be performing along with our band faculty. This is really special because band only gets to go once every 3 years, so on with the other. Okay.
And then just to end off, we want to put a little spotlight on our student-run newspapers. I guess we have 2 literary magazine specs. I'll talk about the literary magazine, which is a student-run club that basically writes opinion pieces and articles by students for students, and is published on they publish about 3 times a year. They should be coming up with a new edition in it says late March to early April. So check that out. It's pretty good. And then the Prospect, which I will not be telling you about this meeting, but next meeting, one of our student reps is the editor, and she'll tell you about it then.
One of you guys are doing senior experience with any Board of Ed members?
Mr.
That was the same face.
What would you like to?
They're like.
Speaking of that, we'd like to our ed members for the committed efforts to our students. To begin, the 9th and 10th grade spring dance will be held next Friday on March 21st from 6:30 to 9 p.m. in the Ward Gym. All proceeds will go to support our freshmen and our sophomores.
We want to congratulate all our students who participated in the state DECA competition. Fairfield High School had 25 students placed in the top 5, competing against over 1,100 students across CT. Our finalists will compete in the International Career and Development Conference in Orlando, Florida. In addition, Ward DECA will have a Chipotle fundraiser tomorrow from 5 to 9 p.m. All are welcome to support.
Next up, on Friday, March 28th, in 2 weeks, during period 2, the HEAT program will present to our juniors and seniors. We'll be welcoming a federal prosecutor, a parent who lost their child to overdose, and a Drug Enforcement Administration agent to address the dangers of fentanyl and opioid misuse. And HEAT stands for the Heroin Education Action Team. That's from the U.S. Attorney Office.
Fairfield High School will be administering the Connecticut SAT to juniors on Wednesday, April 2nd. Furthermore, the stamp test will be administered throughout the next 2 weeks, and it will give students a chance to receive the seal of biliteracy.
And finally, we'd like to say congratulations to our Ward Orchestra and chorus groups on their spring concert last Thursday. The Ward Band concert will be held this month, as you mentioned, but they will be performing in Nashville, Tennessee, where they will receive feedback from professional music technicians. We wish them the best of luck as they make that journey. And we also look forward to the board setting the graduation date for the class of 2025 later on today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for our representatives? All right, seeing none, thank you for your contributions. Well, we're sorry we're not going to see you guys back, but you can always watch us.
Well, absolutely. That's my favorite.
Best of luck, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, we have anyone interested in delivering public comment on any of our agenda items this evening?
Hi, Megan McHale, 188 Range Road. I'd like to cancel the request to join the Wi-Fi so that I can see this. Okay. I'd like to thank the FPS staff who created the technology presentation that we will be seeing shortly. I'm grateful that the safety of our children online is a concern our kids seriously. I would love, however, to see the current approach flipped. Instead of making sure apps are safe, make sure they are even worth having in the first place. Instead of allowing access to the entire internet but blocking certain websites, why don't we block everything and allow only the sites that we know we need for schoolwork? Instead of giving parents the option to opt out of YouTube, why don't we give them the option to opt in? It's no secret that these kids are always 1 or 5 steps ahead of us. Doesn't it make sense to make it easier on ourselves to limit what we have to monitor as much as possible? Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on tonight's agenda items? Well, seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, presentations. IT, safeguarding student digital activities. Mr. Taddy and Ms. Quirk.
Thank you for having me. My name is Donna Quirk, and I'm the cybersecurity analyst for Fairfield Public Schools. Today, we're going to be talking about safeguarding our students with the digital activities. Our district is committed to providing a secure and digital learning environment where technology enhances education while protecting students from inappropriate content and distractions.
We use a multi-layered approach that ensures that the school internet resources are used exclusively for education purposes. For our content filtering systems, we use a enterprise grade filtering system. The system allows us to block based on category or on URLs or on IP addresses. It also allows us to have specialized allow list where we can allow a site that may be a subcategory of, say, a gaming site. It may be like an educational gaming site. We have updates that are updated daily, if not hourly, on our content filtering sites. So if there's a busy day in cyber world, we may see more updates than we would on a not so busy day. Our devices will operate both on the network level and the device level. So if somebody was to come in with bring your own device and they connect to our Wi-Fi, they will also be subject to our filtering. We are able to provide real-time monitoring, and we are able to also delve down deeper and generate detailed reports for either administrators or for a request that comes through. We protect our devices both on network and off network. So if a student brings home their device, our school filtering will still be intact. Again, subject to filtering at home. Proxy site detection and prevention. We all have heard a lot about proxies and VPNs, and our students will sometimes, of course, try to circumvent our filtering by using a proxy. A proxy is a mechanism which basically allows them to disguise themselves and basically hop over our filtering. We have multiple protections in place that will allow us to block this from happening. One of the categories, which I spoke about earlier, is a category called proxies and anonymizers. And this is blocked, of course. And as we receive updates, some of these will be updated. So every day a new proxy will come out and we'll get that update, hopefully based on the content category. If we don't see that happen and we know that there is a student circumventing it with proxy and a teacher reports it to us, we're able to recategorize it almost immediately. Basically let our content filtering know that we found this site, you have it categorized as not applicable, and it needs to be recategorized as proxy anonymizer. I notice when I do this, they usually have the turnaround time within an hour. So it's really quite quick when they do have this and change it. We also do prevent, or we do employ all of the bullets that are up on the board, such as, the deep packet inspection, which basically will look down at the packets at a level that we typically don't see. And it will let us know exactly what type of traffic this is. Is this a video traffic? Is this malicious traffic? It'll let us block it based on its behavior of that actual packet. Our application vetting process, actually just bring this down to my page so I can see it better. We go through an application vetting process for every application that we our initial security is basically seeing, are they going to sign the Connecticut Data Protection Act, or have they already signed it at a state level? Are we going to check the vendor verification? Want to make sure that they're a viable vendor and that they've been vetted. They're not some fly-by-night organization. We also want to check their encryption standards. We want to make sure that the data is coded and it's not just left in plain text for anyone to see that. Have an educational value of evaluation. Basically, does this follow our curriculum? How does it meet our curriculum? Is this for our K through 5 groups, or is this through our secondary level groups? And what learning outcomes are we going to expect from the software? Bless you. Our technical integrations, how are we going to make sure that we're authenticated to this software securely and seamlessly, and whether or not this will actually run on our devices? Are we buying software that will operate properly on our Chromebooks? Are we getting software that's going to properly operate on our Windows devices? We also want to make sure that we're meeting our privacy compliances such as COPA, FERPA, and SEPA. Verification of their data practices. Are they going to be mining our students' data? Want to make sure that we're following the guidelines that dictate what we have to follow. And then, of course, we have our ongoing monitoring. We want to make sure that we get regular updates, software patches to keep the software up to date, and possibly patching any holes that we found in the operating system. And then usage patterns. Usage patterns will allow us to see how the software is being used and if we're getting the outcome that we want to receive. Student digital citizenship. We find that technology always works better when it's combined with education. One of the things that we think would help us is if we require digital citizen curriculum, basically, which would outline how responsible posting, cyberbullying, and other topics that are that are part of our guidelines to better use this. We also want to acceptable use policy training for all students. When an acceptable use policy is usually signed by the parent upon registration. So an acceptable use policy training for all the students would basically help them understand a little more of what's expected of them when they use the district's devices. You can also have regular reminders about responsible internet usage. We know within LMSs at the secondary schools, I know that they go through regularly and they talk about cyberbullying and they talk about how when you put something out there, it stays out there. And so we do have some of that happening within our library media, especially right now. Bless you. And our last bullet being that we have a system called TIPS. We begin to use TIPS to also use to report online activity, both on network or off network. And our last slide is about our parent partnership. We have put a lot of work into a site that has been developed that will help parents learn how to do parental controls at home, whether they're using Optimum, whether they're using GoNetSpeed, or whether they're using Frontier. You can scan the QR code, which will bring you directly to the website, or you can use the link that's on the page. That will bring you to the website. Part of our parent partnership is to have regular communications regarding our technology policies and what we're doing to implement to keep our students safer. And with that, that brings this presentation to a close. Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for this presentation and for coming here tonight. As you've probably gotten a sense from the public discourse, it's timely that we're talking about this. Mr. Lee, question.
Couple of things. Are you doing an orientation for the parents also before school starts on the digital landscape, also on the safety, like at the orientation or something?
We do not have one planned at this time.
And then other sites that also mobile devices too, when kids come into school, mobile devices.
Yes,
And we're blocking sites like that deal with fancy football and things like that also, or is that on one of the approved?
that would be under gambling, so that's gonna be blocked. However, if the students are coming in and they're not connecting to the BYOD network and they're using their cellular off their phone, they're able to bypass our systems.
Marco Teddy, Director of Technology. I would add to that some of the guidelines that we broke down in the internet usage at home breaks down how to take devices and actually add restrictions either to their device directly or your home network, as well as your ISP. It goes over a bunch of different ways to do it, both for free and some paid solutions as well, and we plan to add on to it. But I bring that up because maybe they have a phone that's on cellular, we don't have the ability to filter or block those pages. However, you as a parent that gives the device could add filtering. How could they try to circumvent you and get around? Sure. But at the very least, you can take some proactive approaches for a device that we may be out of our control, especially a cell phone. I think there's a question.
Tracy.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. Thank you. On the proxy site detection and prevention, you mentioned, you can look at something when a teacher reports it. I'm curious, how often are teachers reporting this trickery that they're using?
I would say we probably get a report at least once every 2 weeks. Like they'll come to us and they'll say, hey, we see this student getting to this site. And we'll look into if that site is getting through our filter or if they're using a proxy anonymizer to get to this site.
So one teacher every couple of weeks for.
Every couple of weeks.
So it's not widespread.
It's not widespread at all,
As far as reporting.
as far as reporting.
Right. Okay.
And I look at the filters daily. So I can make sure that there's no false positives and that things are getting blocked that should be blocked.
Okay. And have you found commonality between the proxies and the VPNs that these kids are using, or are they all over the map?
Well, they're all over the map, but once we find out about one, we block that one and it can't be used again. So as long as we stay ahead, and there's also, I'm sorry, let me start over. We have the availability to get something called threat feeds from our content filtering. And these threat feeds are updated usually daily. They come from such companies as Cisco and iBoss. And what they do is they actually find the proxies for us and they update our filters, which then update our categories. And then once those categories are updated, we should have those newest of all of the VPNs and all of the anonymizers and all the proxy sites that were found today.
And how just that for reference, like on average, how many a week are you getting of those updated?
Well, I looked on actually iBoss's page today and as well as Cisco, and they get approximately 60,000 updates per day to their web filters and to their filtering products, not just for VPNs, but for new malicious sites, for new sites that have just come online. So on an average, 60,000 new items a day are coming through as being blocked.
And then on the application vetting process, that slide you had with the 6 boxes and the flow chart. I'm curious, with over the last couple months, we've heard of how many apps there actually are that our kids have access to on the network. And I guess my question is, with so many, how do you guys keep up?
You have something called the Learn platform. And the Learn platform actually lets us take a look at, has an application been notified, or has it been listed? Has that application been vetted? Have they signed the Data Privacy Act? And have we implemented this? And if so, where and for what grades? So that's one of the resources that we use to stay up to what applications we're using.
And so you mentioned that, have they signed the data privacy? That's a Connecticut agreement, right?
Correct.
Do we have, or have we developed any of our own internal agreements with
Yes.
vendors? And how often are those applied? Are they applied blanket to everybody and you go through your own rigorous approval process, or are we just relying on the state form for some of those?
No, okay.
So, in the past, certain of the larger applications that we needed to be approved for whatever particular use was there, we actually would develop our own. We currently rely on the state approved ones, and if they're not state approved at this point, we're blanket not approving those. Because at the point where the state's not approving it, then unless we have a very specific need to actually get our own policy in place, don't go for that.
So that's for the privacy though, right? I mean,
Yes.
But I'm talking about our own internal agreements with vendors to try and safeguard and ensure cyber attacks and things like that. that maybe one company might be more susceptible because of how their software is written or operates. Like, are we going deep, like, and I'm using as a reference, like, I work for a huge, organization that, I mean, if I wanted to get an app or a third-party software for a program that I run, I mean, it's like an act of Congress to get it through. But I appreciate that because I have learned some of the deep dives that they go in and some of the language that they're saying. I have no idea what it means, but it sounds important. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Would like to add, from your use example, you're actually talking about an actual application that's physically installed on the machine. as
No,
opposed to-
web-based.
It's just getting to a web page at all. Okay, so I mean, in that regard, getting to the page, if it's not falling under certain categories, so part of that vetting chain is already in policy on the network itself. So one of the things, for example, from a security standpoint, if it doesn't pass encryption standards, you cannot navigate to the page. If it doesn't pass a categorical standard, then you will not be able to go to that page. There's multiple layers of those filters. So in your regard, it's to do with privacy policies. That's which is why I was mentioning about the state policy of it.
Yeah, but also just susceptibility for entrance by bad actors through
So-
a software that may be more susceptible as a backdoor.
Right, so a good example would be, imagine there's a platform that allows Google login. And obviously all of our students and staff have Google logins. If we haven't manually added it from the IT side as an allowed application, they cannot use Google to log into that application. So they can't just find something on the web that happens to fall under a category that's allowed and then just get into it. They could maybe navigate the public page because it is an allowed page, but they wouldn't be able to create an account and go through that process unless it's something that we've actually allowed into the network.
And what do you say, do you mind if I just have one or two more, is that okay? What do you say to, for example, there was public comment tonight, which I found intriguing, but I also am not in your position. The idea of a firewall for everything, the reverse, like why would that be, or how could that be problematic if we just shut it down and only allow what we have approved?
To be honest, a good statement, and Donna probably has even more to add to this, but that would be easier for us. I think it would be a lot harder for everybody else. I think it'll be a lot harder for the schools that may have some particular resource document or page that they need to use.
But I mean, and I don't wanna make staff's job harder, but I would think that if that was part of their teaching and their regular thing, that they would know ahead of time. They're not winging it and coming up with a web page, and I mean, obviously, I would appreciate the input from the FEA on that, but I think that I would assume that a teacher isn't, just fly by night coming up with, like, they probably have it planned out. So my question again then goes to, do you even have the bandwidth to handle those requests of those outliers?
Yeah, obviously there has to be a very strict workflow put in place to handle those how many checks are gonna come in from the 1,200 plus staff they're gonna be submitting into every other support staff member asking for links to be added on the website. We'd have to plan that project out.
I mean, I just offer it as kind of reiterating what was stated, that it seems like a common sense approach, but I know that's not always as easily said as than done,
Yes. There's other things to think about too. I mean, even look at Adobe and their actual underlying suite of products. They're constantly changing servers and modifying their platform and adding services that we're checking, but there's also a level of now it doesn't work because we haven't allowed one of their CDN networks.
Yeah.
Now no one can continue with it until we have allowed that, and no one's gonna think to submit some rogue, Adobe system. So it becomes
unless we change the culture.
Right.
So it might be a learning curve and a bump in the road, but we could eventually get there. And then I think my last question would be, Mr. Lee kind of asked it to a point, but I noticed on the student digital citizenship, and then this last part, this parent partnership, I'm very intrigued by this. And shame on me if I missed an email or a communication, this is the first I recognize seeing this as far as the resources for
We've
parents.
just published this.
Okay.
Yes, and we wanted to speak about it tonight.
Oh, so it's gonna be going out in a communication.
Yes, and it is live. We just thought it would make sense to speak about it publicly.
I think it's phenomenal.
Been on the page
Yeah.
for about a week or so.
Okay.
Making sure it's working, everyone can load it up right away.
I mean, I know with my kids' technology, I do my best to, you know, try and lock that down.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's probably tips and tricks in here that I could learn from, and I appreciate that. But circling back to my final comment, we talk about the acceptable use policy training for all students. And I wonder, and this might just be a pie in the sky because there's so many parents out there, and maybe we just make it an option for them. But I think creating some sort of brief training, and even if that's a virtual recorded thing for parents that so choose to want to watch, I think that could be really helpful, because I think a lot of parents don't necessarily know what their kids are using our devices or their devices for in school. So exposing them to that may open up that conversation with their kids, and then maybe to the final point of this part, maybe we start to change that culture and we start to engage more parents to do that, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chestnut, is there gonna be a broad communication going out?
Yes.
Highlighting the parent?
Yes,
Campus.
Rachel's working tomorrow, that's gonna go on, but again, the unveiling.
I appreciate you unveiling it here, but our viewership numbers are low.
I think, yeah, well, I think it was best to share it before we sent it out, and then it would generate questions prior to at least having some background around it, so.
Understood. Ms. Guernsey?
Thank you, and just to echo the enthusiasm about the parent partnership, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to see what you have there. I'm sure I'll learn so much. And I hope that maybe this link or this website is an area that we can store additional information that might have recommendations that we make as a board or through these committees where we're addressing the issue of technology, and that we can expand on what recommendations to parents would be outside of this like within the parent partnership. So, and I love that phrase too, parent partnership.
Get their eyes on it. Need more information. We do plan to add more providers and more devices to the list as they want. Try to keep you guys informed. It's even trying to think of a parent code. Circumventing that, because they're just gonna read that and then learn the trick.
Of course, oh, that's so funny. I have one other question just about tips. I'm not sure that I've looked for this recently, but the last time I saw that it was like kind of buried in a drop down, and it used to, like the button you would click on for tips, and it used to like lay right at the top of the website.
Right on top of every site, links, and it's the first item. But it used to be actually there, but we didn't have space for that, but it's one of the main links. So it's tips, class link, it's right up there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I wanna kind of go back to the apps. Heard lots of parents talk about a multitude of different amount of apps on different kids' computers. How does that process work? How does a kid add specific apps? Do we have guardrails that teachers or parents can help them add these apps, or it's like a free-for-all? If there's 50 apps on their computer, they can put them all on their home screen if they want. I'm just trying to understand the process, because like my son, I think, has 10 apps, but I've heard some people have 53 apps, so.
You're referring, so in ClassLink, which is the primary hub that they use to jump between apps or different programs, they can add a shortcut link to another app that's already been in the list, or just copying and pasting a URL. So they find a URL, they can actually add it, and it may be for good use for resources, or if they were to find some type of link to something that they shouldn't be looking at, they could add that link. However, again, because we're filtering pages, that particular link that they've added would have had to fell under a proper category and have been allowed for security purposes. So if they have 50, they could also have 50 of the same thing over and over.
Is there a way to maybe optimize that or do it by grade? Like certain apps are, every third grader has access to these apps, every fourth grader has access to these.
All those folders that we push them out to the students, either by grade, by school, and even depending on the type of classes they're in already, we're putting the ones that they would be using in general. They can add additional ones though.
That's more my additional one. It's not that I'm saying there isn't.
The way to do that would
value
be,
to it, But it's.
the way to do that would be to actually, because again, they can add the same link over and over. It could just be google.com over and over and over. Would be that we wouldn't allow them to add their own shortcuts, but it comes a pretty important tool, even for the younger age individuals that as they're learning to use the internet. Bookmarking maybe a page within a site that they have been to, so they can quickly jump to it. So, as for filtering those and looking through, we are looking to any website they're going to. So we're finding that someone's going to a page they shouldn't be, it is being flagged, and so that process is happening. But as for them adding folder, aside from not allowing them to add the folder, there really isn't any way of.
For me, adding a folder of links is one thing, but adding 50 apps is another thing, and maybe I'm not understanding what.
They are just adding a link. Yes, they're not adding an app. They're not adding like an Adobe product or something. They're just adding adobe.com or google.com. It's literally just a link to it. So not to say that that isn't the same thing as an application, especially with web apps, it is another terminology for it, but it is in fact, they're just adding a link. Same thing with extensions, like which an extension on Chrome, for example, is an application. They cannot add applications to their devices. They're not allowed to install them on a Windows device, and they're not allowed to install them on a Chrome device, but they can go to a web page. So the terminology is confusing, especially with web apps becoming so prevalent, but it is in fact a website, not a application. Yeah.
Thank you. And then one other question, I lost my train of thought for a second. As it pertains to some parents saying that there are kids on buses watching YouTube, how is that possible? Are they linking to like Optimum? Cellular VPNs? Even elementary school kids that don't have phones are able to do that?
iPads can have cellular devices. They could be tethering off one individual that has one or a hotspot. If they're in proximity, they could get optimum Wi-Fi, which is around, but that's not likely to happen during the bus ride. So otherwise, we don't provide Wi-Fi on the buses. So the internet would have to have come from themselves or someone on the bus.
Does that seem possible to you? Like, I'm saying I don't doubt it if people are saying it, it's just.
I mean, most devices and pretty much every tablet on the market, and even a lot of laptops have the ability to have a SIM card. So they could be on cellular.
This is your follow-up?
Yeah, actually, I follow up on both now. So I know in policy we discussed and we heard comments and stuff, but I think most of the ones that I've heard have been kids with cell phones, making videos, watching YouTube and doing that stuff. I haven't heard it mentioned on a kid's Chromebook. It's more their own personal devices, which must have cellular.
I've actually heard Chromebook. That's why I'm just asking the question. Someone said that once.
We don't even allow them to, in that scenario, right, we wouldn't allow them to go. Once they jump on the Chromebook, even if they bypassed, they're not able to go to a web page that they're not supposed to. Even if they're on a special network that they've set up on cellular, once they're on the Chromebook, they're going through our filtering and, I mean, of a YouTube video they should see, but if it's not something that they should be.
They're not watching Mr. Beast on the. The second part was, like Mr. Krasnoff, I guess I'm a little confused. So I'm thinking, for example, when I've seen my kids' class link, like there's things like Prodigy and things like that. Are you saying that those are not apps? Those are links? Like,
Links, yeah.
okay.
ClassLink is a tool that allows us to have bookmarks set up for them, but it also lets us do a deeper insight into SSO.
Okay.
So we have a lot of products that have very special ways to log into them.
Gotcha.
And this allows us to have one place that we are providing all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes to get to those pages, and we update them across the district. So
I was confused because when I hear app, I think of like on my phone, it's a downloaded app versus a.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And again, it is muddled because it's what's the difference between a web.
Do we have any of those individually assigned? Like, I guess those would be.
On a Windows device, you have a lot of, especially the secondary schools, may have a CAD or they have Adobe products for the graphics classes, the music classes have all.
But those wouldn't be in class, like those would be like on their home screen.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and that would only be able if you pushed them out to them?
They could find a page and then add it as their own bookmark. They could actually hit add and then paste a link for something like maybe a particular page they want to look at. But again, they can't add any applications.
Thank you.
Mrs. Flynn?
Follow-up, actually, kind of in the same vein. So how many links do we preload on ClassLink for, say, I don't know if this is through Mr. Testani, for like our K-5 students?
I'd have to check the exact number.
Maybe I would be interested to see how many we preload and
I
select.
wanna say it's in about a dozen.
Okay,
It's-
and do you mind if I do one more? Did you have any more?
I'm done.
Kind of in a similar area, underneath that application vetting, the educational value evaluation. What does that look like in practice? Who does that? I don't know if that's through Mr. Testani. Is that done by the IT department, by our academic instructors, our teachers? Who's kind of involved in that process and what does it look like?
Mostly, the library side.
Oh, our library media. And then I had one more, I'm sorry. On that first page, it talks about generating a detailed report for administrative review. What does that report look like? Is that kind of just, what does that look like? Is it just a year end?
Which side was that from, the?
Yeah, that would be with under the content filtering.
So you're just basically generating all that you've seen and just letting the administration know?
Well, we can actually search the criteria, so we
Oh.
can go down specifically to a student, to a time.
Oh, wow.
We can look for a specific website.
So when you are seeing these students that are using proxies or VPNs, is it as simple as you block it and that's the end of the road, or does that get followed? Is there an additional path of that with administration? That's a Mr. Testani.
No, they block it. That's pretty much it.
Is there any follow-up with like the students or the families for a little bit of education maybe about, like I said, I'm sure we have students that are trying to get on YouTube, or I don't know what that looks like. I'm sure it's varying degrees depending what it is.
No, I mean, the only thing that there's follow through is when things pop up on Gaggle. So if there's anything when it comes to, you know, self-harm, drug use, any of those things, there's follow through with those. I think to what you're saying, if every proxy is gonna get blocked, I can't imagine how much time would be spent calling students down and having conversations. I mean, they know what they're doing. It's not like we're telling them something and then notifying parents. I think what they do is just block them, shut them down, and call it a day.
Thank you. And just lastly, the parent partnership is phenomenal, and I would just encourage you guys to maybe reach out to our digital wellness committee. I know that they've done a lot of work through our PTA councils, maybe continue to build that parent partnership.
Mrs. Rinaldi?
So I did have a question. Say, for instance, a student did want to go on a web page and it was blocked. And it was something they actually needed for class or studies or that sort of thing. I'm just thinking in my current role at work, I've had to reach out to the IT department and ask them, hey, I need to get onto the site. Can you temporarily let me get on? Is that something that is allowed as well? Because I've noticed that when they do allow me to get on, I have unlimited access from it. So just, I've looked up, I work in finance, so I've looked up, dividend payouts for Playboy, that sort of thing. And I did notice that I was able to get and be able to do that, 6 months later. And I wasn't sure if there's that type of ability where they could reach out and say, or a teacher could say, hey, we do need to get on this site temporarily.
Typically, we do have like a vetting process for that. And typically what happens if a student needs a site, they'll go to their teacher and then the teacher will either request the site from us. But if it's something that's questionable, we will sometimes ask them to go through their curriculum leader.
And then is there like a time frame or anything, or is it just?
I can have a site unblocked within 5 minutes.
I'm just saying.
So it would be unblocked
It would be unblocked
indefinitely.
indefinitely.
Okay. So that's something just, concerning to me, say, I don't know, they're researching something or that's just something
It
that.
really depends on the circumstance too. If it's something that's bad enough that we'd have to de-block, we probably wouldn't have allowed it to be unblocked. It's like in your example, we would never have allowed the page to load. So I think that it also is by the group. If some staff members are like, hey, this is a page that we're using, we may actually allow a staff member to get to it, but we wouldn't allow a student to. It may also be just one particular user, and it would only be that page. They wouldn't suddenly have access to it. Be unblocking that specific page or that specific.
Okay.
I would like to note that Playboy is a NASDAQ listed public company. Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you. I'm on the chart page. On the privacy piece for the COPA piece, how are you getting the original consent?
Two ways, straight from their actual resources, so if it's at the website or provided by the vendor, so they would be sending us the.
Okay. I think you're not getting direct parental consent
For every single application.
Yeah. Under the certain age, under 13.
The AUP covers that side of it, so they've gone through that process, and then.
So when they sign the AUP, that's the process. The email that went out recently, let's just talk about that for a second, about the not meeting federal and state law, so if you don't like it, opt out piece. We're saying here in this document that you're compliant with federal laws and state laws, but recently sent out an email that says we're using products that are actually, so how do you make a decision about using something that is not compliant?
Well, in this example, this is something that all the districts are dealing with, this process, but the Google additional services, and it's something that hasn't changed. What they're actually tracking, that process hasn't changed. Our AUP actually covers that they've actually signed off that it's allowed to be used. We felt it was pertinent that if someone didn't want to see it, that we would ask and show the information.
I understand the best practice.
And to be honest,
I'm specifically asking about why did you decide to use something at all that wasn't compliant? That's my question.
I don't know a good answer to that.
Do our devices track time?
No, they do not.
Like our phones or other devices or whatever, say, hey, you were on 2 hours today or whatever it might be.
We recently went through this process. The problem is that the Chromebooks themselves are not tracking the exact usage time for the time that they're logged into, being used actively to log out.
Versus on.
We do know how many times they log in a day, which pages they're going to, which places they've gone to. Certain web applications will give us their own tracking, although even those are not really that reliable. A lot of them are just based on some type of session time. Like the second that someone goes on to a platform, they just assume it's 13 minutes, and then if you logged in twice, 26 minutes. So we don't actually the exact amount of time that they're on the device in that exact moment, but we do know, hey, this student logged into this device 17 times today. How long they spend on each session, we don't have an exact metric.
Follow up to that?
Sure.
To that point, is there a way to see trends by classrooms? And I know, well, it may be a lot of work, but is there a way to see a trend if like a specific class, and I say this for good and for bad reasons. Let's say one class used a ton of IXL and we see that class's math scores go way up. It may help us make decisions for what other teachers do or do not do. Also, if we see trends the other way that, one class is doing another thing way more than they probably should, it just might be good data if we're able to collect it, just information.
So, we've been looking further into this because I actually asked Google about this. Because Google does not track that exact session time. Now, certain applications may have a more detailed, like you mentioned, IXL has a very, very well detailed breakdown of the things that are done. To your point, you'd have to decide which applications you want to look at and then figure out if those actually have, actual information. Is the information viable?
Can we bucket by class? Can we go that deep, or is it just gonna be by student or?
Theoretically, once you knew which students you're looking at, you could group it. But again, it would have to make sure that you knew that the information was correct. It would be a really, it would be a bad idea to actually say a report about something when you didn't know that the actual time was the actual time they spent. You wouldn't want to say that a particular student spent half of a day doing something when in reality they only logged in 5 times and this program logs 30 minutes per session, even though they only spent a minute.
Is this like if you turn your TV on, you pause it, you walk away, it's technically still on?
I think that's likely why Google doesn't track that if possible, because they don't know when you flip it open, are you actually using it? iOS and the iPhone, for example, does the screen time program, but it has a very similar issue. If you have YouTube or something open on your phone and you're not even watching it, it's still counting, so.
Not tracking keystrokes like corporate America.
And we aren't, yeah, and we're not tracking keystrokes.
Got it, thank you.
Jacobson, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I was gonna ask about the tracking, so, and none of our tools allow for targeted advertising then?
The tools that we're implementing? No, in fact, most of the things that we're trying to do is we're blocking a lot of the networks that are coming out. And most applications that have a lot of advertisements are being blocked. Now, Google, and YouTube does have ads that are targeting based on the video watched. But we're even, a lot of those are being blocked as well. And you notice that on our network, a lot of them aren't playing.
And do our kids under 16 have access to those ones as well? And I use that age just for people to know, because that's the ages that usually the
Have access
laws kind of expire. The YouTube and the Google Maps.
Yes, they would have access to it on our network, if they have not opted out.
Have we asked them why they're not compliant?
Connecticut spent a lot of time having that conversation and they
I'm
want to
aware.
go back and forth. So,
Okay, the last thing I wanted to ask Mr. Peterson, if that's all right with you, is two things. The tech plan that we have on our website, technology in general, is 2018 to 2023. So is the department working on updating our technology plan? Or are you waiting for us to have our conversation? How is that? I mean, it's very out of date. Like we didn't have elementary Chromebooks when it was created, so.
yes, I know that we've had the discussions about bringing back the committee as well, possibly to,
Update it.
internally, because that's how it was created originally, was actually
Right.
a committee as opposed to just our department.
It's just so out of date. I mean, the world's changed since 2018 dramatically, and so has the district, so.
I think it's a good idea.
Maybe that's part of the conversation Mr. Peterson and everyone plans to have. And the last thing I'll say is not, for this budget or anything, but a few years ago, it's gotta be coming up on 5, I can't remember the last time we did it, we had an external cybersecurity audit done, put money into the budget for that. Best practice would say every 5 years at least, to have an external done. So it's gotta be coming on that, and it's not that the eyes we have aren't wonderful, it's just us, it's sometimes the best practice is to let someone go in and try and break us and see if, and then see what we can learn. So I know last time it was helpful, and I just looked that to the administration for not this budget year, but going forward, if we want to think about that for the following year.
Speak about that, actually.
We did just do it.
Oh, you did an external?
We didn't do a full audit like we did the last time, but what we did is we had the Army National Guard come in. And they sat with us and they asked us a series of 103 questions.
Great.
And then they came back with
That I would be interested in.
we actually we just got the report, I believe, on Friday.
Awesome.
So, and so far it looks like we came back with some flying colors. So,
Want to hear?
but it's not in the same depth as the audit that we did last time.
Keeping eyes on it every so often is it's good, and I know it's hard to do, and it's expensive, so to do something, okay, well, that's great.
We have been looking
Better.
at some tools as well that we can implement internally. I know it's not the same as having a third-party audit because it's our vetting,
I understand.
but,
I'm just throwing it out there for the future.
great idea.
So I guess the time question came up for me, and then I'll wrap up. Because when we first issued one-to-one, that was one of the first questions we talked about, was setting time standards and expectations. And, here we are, almost a decade later, and we don't even know how much time. So, I think as we have that conversation, I mean, there's two ways to back into that. We can dictate it, or we can learn, like kind of what Mr. Krasnoff was saying, to have a better understanding of that. And that's why I raised the question, because I am curious, and it doesn't sound like there's any way for us to know that, which is unfortunate. But I think that some of the concern is the time. So that, just leave it with that. So thank you.
I will say, I think the cybersecurity audit we did was post-COVID, but it still may have been 3.5, 4 years ago. I think
So
we're on the edge of that.
we're on the edge.
I don't think it was pre-COVID, unless I'm gravely mistaken. Anyway, COVID was a long time ago, doesn't feel very relevant. Any other questions? I just maybe ask Mr. Testani, in terms of this security evaluation, if there's some form that we might be able to get a report on that to board members, I would be interested in that. I mean, obviously not to break into the security needs and vulnerabilities, but areas that we scored well in, think it'd be good for us to just get a,
Yeah, we'll talk about how the best way to communicate that will be to the board.
being sensitive that we don't need privy information to the bad stuff.
Yep, I have it right here on my list.
Well, thank you. I had a bunch of questions, but everyone asked them, questions about usage and, so I really appreciate it. It's been a great discussion. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll move on to, it's going to be a more complicated than usual set of, consent calendar motions.
Make it quick.
Well, let me put them on the table first,
yes,
just approving these 5 sets of minutes. And I do want to say, I want to appreciate, everyone's input on these. Some of them, as we know, going through the budget season are very dense. Have a lot of eyes on them and some changes that have been made. And Ms. Flynn, you wanted to mention something about?
Yes, first of all, I wanna thank board members who were able to give me their quick feedback. It was a lot of minutes, especially our budget vote night. I wanna thank especially Ms. Maxon Kennelly and Ms. Jacobson. I do wanna just note that Ms. Maxon Kennelly did give us a typo that genuinely many of us could not find. I think hours of looking, so I'm gonna ask for a friendly amendment to remove a repetitive word for, not the number, just the word for on page 3. If anyone wants to take a quick look on the January 28th minutes on page 3, under athletic rugby uniform, we literally duplicated the word for, not the number, just the word for. So I'm gonna ask for a friendly amendment that we go ahead and take care of that instead of having to remove it from the consent
Does
calendar.
anyone object to
Yeah, does
that?
anyone object to removing the word for?
The extra word for?
The extra word for, thank you. No, wonderful. So we're good to go.
And in case anyone's looking for it, it's FOR. Last line of the first chunk there, purchase uniforms for the 4 girls and boys rugby teams. So it's not even a number, it's not a money thing, it's just.
It's literally just the word for.
So with that, I'll accept a motion to approve these. Mr. Ace is seconded by Mrs. Guernsey. Any further questions or comments? Oh, Ms. Guernsey.
And I just wanted to say, thank you to our board secretary, during budget season. Minutes are a beast, and having, dealt with it in the past, you are appreciated, so thank you.
Like I said, I thank the board members who were happy to give me edits. Everybody makes mistakes, and I am genuinely thankful for the assistance from the rest of the board.
Will be good to draw a line under these. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you to our board staff.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8, new business. First reading of policy 3430, periodic financial reports. Mexico.
I think it's, hold on, let me get to it. So this is, if you look at this, especially in conjunction with the quarterly reports, you know, this seemed like the more logical place to house all of the information, and thus making quarterly reports, which is next on our agenda, redundant. But I don't know if there are any questions.
Questions on this? Periodic financial reports, 3430. Jacobson.
Just the piece that's striking out, that had come before us when I was still on the policy committee. I'm totally fine with the red language here. The only piece that I was concerned on, when this came before us was keeping that first sentence and then striking on a monthly basis, because obviously we don't do that. But I think it's important that any material thing that might come up in between the quarterlies would be important for the board to consider keeping. And that we wouldn't expect to be waiting for a quarterly report. But I totally get on a monthly basis. So that might be something I'm willing to discuss or bring up with the chair, but that might be an amendment. So just wanted to let anyone know that. And I had mentioned that previously before. So.
I would just add to that, I think that's fine. I try to make it a practice for our finance committee to have an open line item every meeting for periodic financial updates. But I understand exactly why you're asking for it here. Any other thoughts on policy 3430? All right, seeing none. Move on to first reading to delete policy 3430.2 quarterly report.
Already referenced it, so I don't have anything to add.
Okay, any questions? First reading of policy 3542.41, professional standards for food service personnel.
So obviously with the language all in red, this is brand new. This is brought to us by staff, and have a whole lot of controversy in policy, so happy to answer any questions.
Questions at this point on policy 3542? Happy to move on. First reading to delete policy 3431.32, transportation for school-related trips.
So this is not a required policy. This is material that's also part of existing transportation contract. So it was the recommendation of staff that we delete this policy.
Comments? Moving on. First reading to delete policy 3541.33, special transportation for exceptional children.
Again, no need for the policy. This is something that would be covered under the EPT process. So recommendation of staff that there's no need for this policy.
Questions or comments? Moving on, first reading to delete policy 6164.2, guidance and counseling.
Slightly longer notes here. This is again, it's not a mandated policy, that there's no policy needed to affect this in the staff. Rob did, Mr. Mancusi did check with our attorney, who did not feel that that he actually felt that it could create exposure for us with the wording of to the full extent of his or her capacity, and that we were therefore better off without the policy at all.
Thoughts, ideas, comments? Moving on, first reading to delete policy 6164.5, speech, language, and hearing.
So this again, we already follow the law via the PPT process that this policy is not needed.
Any thoughts on this one? Thank you for that comprehensive update. We will bring these back for action at board meeting. Item 8H, establish date and time of Fairfield Ludlow High School, Fairfield Ward High School graduation. Before this goes on, we have a motion here that is empty in terms of time. We were informed that the time was something that was being talked about.
6 p.m.
Okay, 6 p.m. being the regular time.
Correct.
Okay. So I will read the motion as that the Board of Education establish June 11th, 2025 at 6 p.m. as the graduation date and time for Fairfield Ludlow High School and Fairfield Ward High School. Mrs. Jacobson, second by Mrs. Maxon Cannell. Any commentary?
Well, we're looking forward to, hopefully, I think we're in the clear with setting the date tonight. Weather looks good, and even if there was a last minute snowstorm, I don't think it would stick given the ground temperatures have thawed. So we're confident that this is going to be a great day, and hopefully the weather cooperates. As you all know, it's a great evening for our students and our families, as well as our staff, to see the graduates move on. And you will all get information on where you are all going to attend this year. I'm sure you had that last year. So I don't think anybody has a graduate this year, do they? No,
I think so.
Be great. You can just enjoy the night and celebrate with the entire staff and students and families. So.
Any questions? I will point out that this is a little earlier than we have done it in recent years, which has usually been at the second March meeting, but the daffodils are coming out. So I think
parents have been asking, I think, for grandparents and other family members to start making travel arrangements, given the difficulties it is nowadays to get reasonable plane tickets and such. So I think it's a good time to do it.
All right. Any comments from the public on this matter? Being none, back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
Follow-up question?
Yes.
So what we always get immediately as the next question is when will the middle school dates be set?
Sure.
It's always the next thing that happens.
Well, since there's not a lot of travel plans and such, I think we'll start seeing those dates probably around the same time, April-ish, early April. I will meet with and reach out to the 3 principals to see if they already have some thoughts and ideas. I know some of this is predicated, as Dr. Patsis and I were talking about, usually same time frame for Ludlow Middle and Ludlow Ludlow High School. So that's why 6 o'clock seems to work best, the practice after the other ceremony ends, so we'll get that to you.
Any other thoughts? Okay, moving on to item 9, superintendent's report. And I will say that I think we have a lot of updates in general about what happened since last meeting.
Well, sure. Just some good things we'd like to highlight. I just want to really say great job by all the teachers, but also the students, who are 5th graders, our convention inventors who brought creativity to this year's invention convention. They showcased some impressive prototypes to families and judges. State finalists will have the opportunity to present their invention on May 3rd up at UConn. I can say that I was over at Jennings the other day as a judge, and I saw some incredible creativity. And I'm going to mention one. It's kind of a homer one, so to speak, but I do want to say great job to Xander Chapa, Rachel's son, who's our communications director. He came up with one of the most incredible ideas that I think if this gets taken to scale, he could be a multimillionaire by the time he's 21.
Let it out of the bag right now.
Well, that's why I'm not going to, because I did offer to be a partner. This idea is groundbreaking when it comes to the consumption of hot beverages. So I don't know how he thought of it. It was brilliant. Plus some of the others that were really quite impressive for 5th graders. Just blown away.
We need a district Shark Tank.
We do. I think
Oh, so
to me, it was a couple, and it's interesting how some of the students have developed their ideas out of personal experience within their own family. Just like the girl a couple of years ago who was recognized and has now tried to take this up to the patent level. Just because out of necessity of what she saw her mom have to go through in terms of feeding her baby siblings. So it's just amazing how what sparks an idea and how it develops is quite impressive. So just want to mention that. I know it was mentioned by our ward delegation, but student reps, I do want to say that the ward DECA club did exceptionally well. I did send out something to everyone. Quite an accomplishment to have 25 students out of over 1,200 that competed. That will move on. So great job there. I also want to mention, I know principals have left, but the Fairfield Ludlow High School Model UN Club competed in this year's Global Citizens Model UN Conference in New York City. International conference required students to engage in realistic diplomatic simulations where they debated and collaborated with other delegates to propose resolutions pertaining to specific global issues. I'm sure they probably would do a great job and better than some of the adults that are trying to do this right now. But the team went on to win individual awards within their respective committees, as well as the conference award for best medium delegation. So congratulations to the students who participated in Fairfield Ludlow High School. I don't know if any of you were invited or participated in Read Across America Week last week. We had guest readers come into all our schools. I want to say that I had a great experience at Stratfield to 5th grade class, reading the book of choice, which was Dr. Seuss, All the Places You'll Go. It was a great night, a great morning. So saw a lot of familiar faces, and I think the kids really enjoyed seeing the guest readers come in. Since it is a topic as part of our budget highlights, I do want to say Music in Our Schools Month is March. March is recognized by the National Association of Music Education. It's a nationwide celebration of the vital role music education plays in students' lives. So I think it's important throughout the month, we will be sharing snapshots of our music in our classrooms. So you can check out our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you can get on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook from the network or at home, we have a lot of that. But I think it's great to showcase the talents of how our students from elementary all the way on through 12th grade, how they progress with music education and the value that it brings to our community. And then last but not least on this, March is Women's History Month. It's a time that we celebrate and highlight the countless contributions of women and what they have made to our history, culture, and society. So a lot of that is going on this month as well. The other day was International Women's Day, so just shout out to all the women who are in all our lives, and all their contributions to society. The more pressing thing, I do want to thank everyone who came out, whether in person or through email, to support our budget. As you know, this is just one step, Board of Selectmen on the road to finalizing town, but also the school budget. We are advertising. I know a lot of our PTAs are organizing and mobilizing to help restore some of the funding that has been cut from our budget. There is something that's going out. It's kind of a flyer that Rachel created to give the steps and the process of what's next. So March 20th, we will present the Board of Ed approved budget to the Board of Finance right here in this room. If you want to come out in person at 7:30, meeting will be held. In the meantime, we're asking everyone to reach out to the Board of Finance to advocate for the budget. Just to educate some folks, because I know I got a few emails from people saying that we're really not cutting the budget because we are getting an increase to the budget. And just to put that in context, the increases are to cover inflationary and contractual obligations. There is nothing new in the budget that's being added. Actually, there have been significant reductions, as I've tried to explain to those folks, from the proposed budget from the superintendent that the board made some very difficult decisions in January. So it is a reduction and a cut to our current budget if we get full funding. So we encourage everyone to come out and advocate for our students, for our staff, because I think this is going to be difficult next couple of weeks as we try to fight through Board of Finance and then on to the RTN.
Any questions? Seeing none, we can go on to committee and liaison reports. Mr. Lee?
Nothing really to report on the HVAC IAQ committee except business as usual. I am gonna report off the SEPTA. They had a good meeting, their second meeting third meeting year, I believe, recently, and they are actually looking for volunteers to step up on their board. They are maxed out as far as who can run again, so they're looking for volunteers.
Ms. Jacobson?
So a couple of things. In facilities, we have asked Mr. Peterson to put on the either tonight or for tonight's meeting or the next meeting, which will obviously be the next meeting, draft ed specs. The committee has worked through 4 revisions of them for Dwight. It is also something that the consultants on the town side are needing from us. So we feel like it's in a good place to get board input and feedback at this point before taking it back and coming back for first reads and things like that. So that's coming. We also began, mainly the superintendent began having discussions about what a relocation of students might look like. Sounds like that is going to be a challenging puzzle to figure out for administration to work on. So a lot of work being done over there and challenging. So legislatively, I continue to watch. I have worked with administration and some of our staff. Whenever I see something that might impact the district, and they've been very good at getting back to me in terms of, yes, this would be the impact, or no, it won't, or whatever it might be. So then I follow up testimony, yay, nay, or whatnot. So I am watching those things. Look, we're not even halfway through yet, so we've got a way to go. But still trying to keep things in check as they work through the process and hoping for some additional revenue to Fairfield. So those are my updates.
We can piggyback on this a little bit. You and I had talked earlier, last week about something that we talked about earlier, maybe drafting a statement for the board to send to our state delegation. I worked on some text. I messed around with it. I didn't get a version I liked, but for the next meeting, I think that we can probably do this without too much complication. Basically, just to say, if everyone's on board with, no unfunded mandates, no surprises, fully fund the things that you want, that you indicate you might fund. Just as a statement while the budget is being debated, 9 of us can agree on something. I think that does say something. So if anyone has specific ideas on what a message like that you might want to see it contain, please feel free to reach out to me. Well, I could send everyone what's on this Facebook.
I think simple, you know, everyone might have different views on some things, but right now the challenge is, you know, there's been several unfunded mandates proposed and they are, you know, worth a lot of money. So that's my concern right now. Is if they were to come next year, but we don't have money in our budget for those. But that's the same every session, right? Like, it's just education of like, it's not in the budget next year. So if you want to do it, you guys either fund it or put it off here, right? Like one of those two options, some of those issues. So just being conscientious about it. But yeah, I think for this year, given it's a really difficult year, and not just for us, for a lot of people, you know, ARPA's expiring, ESSER's expiring. And at this point in time, we really need to focus on the revenue side than the unfunded mandate side, but that's just my perspective. That's what I'm advocating for, so just to do something, I'm happy to help with that.
Question for Mrs. Jacobson. Could you just, in your way, for people listening in the public, there's been a lot of talk about the excess cost and the $40 million. And I think there's some confusion that might help us next year, but it's actually for this year. So do you mind just giving a brief synopsis of that?
So the excess cost reimbursement, which is for extraordinary special education costs at 4.5 times our per pupil expenditure. The state has a grant for that, except that it is not a fully funded, meaning the need of all the districts in getting what they should get isn't in the pie. So the pie is too small for all the slices that people need put in for. So we've gone down from a high of, I think, and Mrs. Laborious can correct me, like maybe 82, 80 1 year on a good year, down to, I think in next year, we put in 62% of what we're what we should be getting eligible wise. So the ask that has been, but this isn't new. The superintendents, districts have been asking to fully fund the excess cost reimbursement for as long as I've been at this table, and I'm sure long before that. So it's just that the issue is coming to such a crisis because the tuitions are just keeping to going up and up and up because there's no caps. So even if you're doing a great job in district like we are, and the numbers of kids going out of placement are coming down, you're still seeing that tuition line go sky high. So the ask is to fully fund that, and yes, it is for this year, what they recently passed, that's for this current school year, not for next year. They haven't done the budget for next year. So obviously the governor has a proposal out there, and it does add funding to the excess cost line item, but I don't see that number would fulfill 100%. So.
And just to clarify, the money that we will be receiving for this year doesn't cover the cut we received this year. So I think there's a misconception that we'll be able to get this money and it could go into a contingency fund for next year. It's gonna cover what was taken away, well, almost cover what we lost. It doesn't fully cover it. So I think that's important to understand. We're still at a deficit when it comes to that. On top of a lot of the other things that have occurred, just naturally. A bunch of other external factors that we could never have predicted when we passed the budget last year.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, or Ms. Laborious can correct me if I'm wrong, we are still currently running a deficit for this year.
Correct.
That is larger than the money that we would be getting from this
Correct.
excess cost top up.
Correct.
That's what I wanted to clarify, so thank you.
Sure, yes, this year, not next year, but we are hopeful for next year.
Mr. Crescent.
CES we had last month.
May I ask one more follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, obviously last summer, when, our big news was that the racial imbalance being put off, that moratorium for a year. Is there, maybe your facial expression is telling me I shouldn't have asked this question, but
Totally ask me that question. Yeah.
what is the dialogue on that now? Because that's up in July.
29. So right now it's July 1, 2025. The proposal in the mandate relief bill is to July 1, 2029.
Does that include the study they wanted to do?
Did not see a study.
So it's just basically pausing it,
I believe that is the case.
with no work towards resolving.
But I believe there was no study. It was just just an extension to the 2025 to 2029.
You may remember that in last year's budget, when it was suspended, there was money initially earmarked $250 for a study that was later cut.
Correct.
And it's never been put back in.
Correct.
Thank you.
You never know though, there could, like, things pop up, like there's a long way to go. I could end up with something on, you know, June 10th, the night before, where things get changed and a study what, you know, but right now it is proposed at a 4-year extension on the pause.
Any more questions about state stuff?
My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Krasnov.
I'm glad we're all tuned into state stuff, so it's.
Love it.
Mr. Krasnov.
So CES, last month, we did not have a meeting, so this month we did. Just for catching up on business from last month, but at the end of the meeting, we always have a conversation about what's going on in other districts, other boards, topics of conversation. One of the big topics obviously was budget. Everyone's budget was kind of all over the place. But the conversation that really intrigued me was the discussion of things that possibly could come down from way outside the state from a national level, and how we're handling it with our local other boards and the towns and how we're advising them. Some towns or other boards in other towns have taken the approach of, well, we take one day at a time. If it happens, it happens. Other town boards seem to be a little bit more proactive of kind of looking at where funds may be taken and advising the other boards of possible exposure, just so there were no shocks, like hypothetically, if a few $1 million were taken away from a program, it, you know, wasn't a surprise to the rest of the town. So I just thought it was a good conversation. It's maybe something our board at some point would want to have a discussion about what we want to communicate to the town, but I just wanted to bring that.
Next guy.
First to follow up and then mine, was it solely focused on budget as things that could percolate from the national as opposed to policy or any other issues?
It was more focused on budget because it came out of the budget conversation, but then it kind of veered off into conversations about other stuff. DEI was another thing that came up. What else came up? Any directives that were given down, policy changes, some of the things that are going on in the colleges. A lot of that stuff was touched upon, but yeah, it was mainly budget.
Thank you. And then just very quickly, I just want to thank the finance committee. I did, on behalf of policy, go and speak with finance to apprise them of the discussion we had in policy. First, in terms of passing the change to the transportation policy, which will not be appearing, or it was our intention, it would not appear before this board unless it comes up as something that we want to pursue as a financial option with the budget. But I did have a great conversation with the finance committee regarding all of the ideas that not only the 3 policy committee members kind of tossed around, but also what we heard from the public. And just sharing some of those ideas and the idea of entrusting the finance committee in the next couple of meetings, hopefully to break that down further. You know, we did our part, let them do their part in having better numbers. So I would only suggest if any other board members have some ideas on those topics, because obviously that hasn't been a full board conversation, you know, but just to let a finance committee or Mr. Peterson know. But again, we have handed the baton on that one.
And I guess I'll take over at that point. Thank you for coming. I think we had a very good discussion, especially coming on the heels of the of our town hall on the 25th. I think it was good to hear that and move directly on. We've asked some follow-up questions from the superintendent, and this will come up on our finance committee agenda meetings moving forward. If it's necessary, we'll have an extra one, but right now we'll take it one meeting at a time and try to work it out.
Like I sent everyone, I sent some of the follow-up questions regarding some ridership to all 3 of the committees heads, so finance, policy, and facilities. So you have those in your inbox from earlier. And just some of the legal, I sent you the follow-up as well to your 2 questions on the legal side. So
thank you for that.
Yeah, I think we're all caught up. I think that's it. We have a few things that we're gonna obviously have to discuss when it comes to ridership after we look right now. Yeah, the November numbers.
Discussion is ongoing.
Yep.
So I think it's the important point from there. You know, another thing we brought up at Finance Committee, and this is something that came up at Board of Selectmen and throughout the budget process, to update. I've talked about this, I think, with almost every one of you, but the idea of shared services discussion with the town. The Board of Selectmen was really hoping that discussion would continue, and I said that we would certainly willing to do our part. First Selectman appointed former Board of Ed Chair Christine Vitale to be the point person for that at Town Hall. And I've asked Mrs. Jacobson to be our liaison to that process. So no structure on where that's going yet, but I do hope the conversations will move ahead, talking about, I know Mrs. Jacobson's certainly interested in the idea of where our responsibilities lie. We do have different responsibilities in a lot of these areas than the town does, and we need to be very clear about what's going to happen with that. I'll also add that in Finance Committee, we talked about shared services a little bit, because one of the things that the superintendent did after the Board of Finance brought this up, or the Board of Selectmen brought this up, was reach out to some other districts for guidance, districts that may have gone through a process similar to this. Gotten some mixed results, I think, from the districts that the superintendent has talked to. That's something we can deal with further in finance, but it brought the point back that we want to make sure that anything that we do very carefully, deliberately, and with much advanced thought. Going on to the working group, which I don't have a lot of updates for you, and I did talk with you about this a little bit earlier. A consultant for the project has been selected, Svigal and Partners. Superintendent reached out late last week to the First Selectman saying, hey, can we have a sit down with the consultant to talk about the educational end of the process? So that's something that we hope to get a meeting on sooner or later. We can go through a lot of questions that the town hall has. The ed specs, the draft ed specs came up in that conversation as well. So we're trying to bring all this back together, trying to make sure that everyone understands this is an educational project for students, and that we have vested interest in it as the Board of Ed, and obviously we have to approve where this goes. So I will keep you updated as more updates come. I am hopeful that now that a consultant has been selected, that a more formal schedule of working group meetings will be arranged. And we can put things on a more regular basis, and there may be more opportunity for public information. But Mr. Krasnoff.
Did we get any update, and especially for the public, as to when the work is now gonna begin? Like, has the PO been done? Because originally, I think it was supposed to start a few weeks ago, and I believe no work has been done yet, so.
I'm afraid I have no update on specific schedules. One of the last working group meeting that I was invited to, the question was largely about getting a subcontractor to do borings. But I don't know that work has been done. But that was the last conversation that I was invited to.
Thank you.
And just I have a million things here. So next Thursday, Board of Finance will be there. And Special Project Standing Building Committee has no update because their last meeting was canceled. I think I got most of everything. Any other questions or comments? All right, item 11, open board comment.
Hi, I don't know if Mrs. Rinaldi might have an update on this, or if this information is held within this realm, but just like given the spread of infectious disease at the national level, I'm just wondering, like, I kind of feel like I personally am just interested in updated where our students and staff are standing, like in terms of any kind of vaccination rate information that we have on the people that we're taking care of in our community. Sometimes we've gotten information on those rates. I just haven't seen that updated in a while.
I don't have that information, but I could reach out on that and just ask specifically about that. We didn't have our meeting this week, this month, but I can definitely
Any
ask.
information that they would have for us that we should know going forward about
Vaccination.
this is just, well, in the spread of infectious disease, so I'm talking about measles specifically, so, you know, it's on the East Coast, so hopefully we don't ever have to worry about this, but just like staying ahead of the curve here.
Yes, I can get that information.
Thank you.
Chris,
Just wanna jump on the bandwagon with Vistani. I was lucky enough to do multiple invention conventions, and wow, was really impressed at all the hard work all the fifth graders did. Every single one, a lot of work effort. It wasn't just a few kids, every kid in the fifth grade, and it was really impressive. So I want to thank everyone for having me at their schools and letting me judge, and also thank all the students for the really hard work.
Public comment. Any members of the public wish to comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Lee. All in favor? Thank you very much.